Hey everybody, welcome into the Irish NFL show. Welcome in July, 1 month away from football, pre-season football that is. Welcome in. I hope you're having a good weekend. We're delighted to be joined again by the guy who works for The Athletic. He's got his own podcast, GM Shuffle. Look, welcome back to the show, Michael Lombardi.
It's great to be here. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me back. Hope all is well over in Ireland. Hope you guys are doing good. How hot is it over there this time of year?
I don't know about these boys, Michael, but it's quite warm in the north. Is it hot for you boys? Yeah, it's quite.
It's nowhere near what you have, Michael. I'd say we're in the high 60s, potentially getting into the low 70s at most.
Yeah, we're in the 90s, which is good. I'm not complaining. We've had too many cold days, so it's all good.
Can we take this opportunity though, Michael, to wish you and everybody, especially watching this show, because it's going out on Sunday, happy 4th of July. I hope everybody has a really, really good weekend. But Michael, you came on the show early April, just before the draft. What have you been doing since to keep busy?
Well, I mean, besides listening to people tell me I'm an idiot for Mac Jones, deflecting all those bullets, I've been working on a new book. Book. It's a book about the Hall of Fame. It's a book about essentially, when you go into the Hall of Fame, everybody thinks you're equal, right? Randy Moss and Tommy McDonald are both in the Hall of Fame. Now, who's the better player? And so it's a book about debating. It's a book about the best players in the NFL, the all-decade teams, players that I think have been overlooked, and coaches for that matter. And it's a book that will try to generate some questions and maybe probe into the process of what the Hall of Fame uses. I mean, Jason Taylor was the first ballot Hall of Famer, and Charles Haley took 15 years to get in the Hall of Fame. And I think if you asked anybody, Charles Haley was by far the more dominant player. So what's wrong with the process? And I think that's what the book's going to examine and explore. And at the end, I'm going to come up with the top coaching list and the top 100 player list based on the way I see it, not based on the way you know, that other might see it. And this whole notion that certain players from other eras couldn't play, I find that ridiculous. But there are some that probably couldn't. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm not going to discredit anybody who wears the gold jacket. I'm just going to try to put them in the right category. I think the Hall of Fame needs wings. The PR wing, the era wing, the any era wing, and the beneficiary wing, statistical wing. And I think once you put that in the proper perspective, you'll have a better understanding.
I like the sound of that, Michael. Over here in Ireland, it used to be the case that people used to have two pictures in their kitchen, generally the Sacred Heart and JFK. But my wife is from Minnesota, and I think we have Randy Moss in there alongside those two.
I don't blame you. I mean, I don't blame you. Look, I traded for Randy Moss. We traded a first round pick and Napoleon Harris for Randy Moss. It's the best trade I've ever made. And of all, like Randy Moss is one of the greatest players I've ever watched practice and ultimately dominate games. I mean, he was rare. And he was one of those guys that I say, when you're driving to the stadium Sunday morning and you're the general manager playing against him, you're scared of shit. I mean, you're just nervous and stuff. Sweat's coming down your face because he can beat you no matter what coverage you put on. It's like Tyreek Hill now. Tyreek Hill is the best receiver in football. Nobody wants to talk about it, but he is because he puts the fear of God in every defensive coordinator.
And I suppose keeping with that Patriots team as such, and also one of your other former teams, the 49ers, we know Trevor Lawrence is going to start week one. We know Zach Wilson is going to start week one. Your thoughts on when we might see Trey Lance and Mac Jones, or do they redshirt this entire season, Michael?
Well, I think Mac Jones is going to have to win the job. He's going to have to go to practice in July, at the end of July, and he's going to have 4 really good weeks, and he's going to have to do it. The Patriots are going to practice against the Eagles and the Giants this summer. So he's going to have really good. He's going to have to beat out Cam, and Cam's the incumbent. And you guys are all boxing fans. I mean, he's not going to win a decision. He's got to knock him out. And so I think that's Mac. The Trey Lance one, I can't imagine that a kid who threw the least amount of passes in the National Football League, in college football, can enter the NFL after missing a whole season and pick it up. The speed of the game and all those things, I think, become problematic. So, I don't see that happening. But Jimmy Garoppolo can't stay healthy, so that's a concern. And Kyle's such a really good offensive coach that I think he'll get Lance ready to play in some capacity. not completely.
Michael, when we spoke to you last, the Aaron Rodgers situation hadn't really escalated. I suppose it was only draft week when Adam Schefter broke that story. Neither party has flinched since. We're kind of coming towards training camp. Just wonder what your expectations on Rodgers. I know people suggest he's got issues with the general manager, but most people would recognise that the Packers' decisions are really made by the president, Mark Murphy, and maybe the issue is more so with him than the general manager.
I agree with that, and I think that I've said that all along. I think we're headed for here is a situation where, Aaron's going to have to make a hard decision because I think the Packers are going to call his bluff. The Packers are going to trade him. So if he wants to opt out of the year, he's fully capable of doing that for COVID. He can opt out. He won't get any money, but yet he doesn't have to start paying back money. But he loses a year at 38 years old. Do you really want to do that? And his contract gets told for the remaining for another. So his 221 contract, when he comes back in 22, becomes 221 again. So I don't think you want to do that. And I think that basically he doesn't have a lot of options. If he wants to start paying back the bonus and retire, that's up to him. But I don't think this is not the NBA. He's not going to force their hand. The collective bargaining agreement was put in place by the owners and the players to avoid situations like this. And the players and the owners agreed on it.
Michael, I can't wait to read the book on the Hall of Fame in many respects. I mean, you're right; they're not all created equal. Some players have made 2 all-decade teams, like Brady and Warren Sapp, and Reggie White and people like this. So obviously, there's not equivalents. But thinking about, we touched on 2 of your former teams, the 49ers and the Patriots. There's an awful lot written and an awful lot of books around those great dynasties and what's occurred there, and kind of in a similar way to what you're trying to enlighten on the Hall of Fame, the stuff that maybe doesn't see the light of day in terms of the reality of the difference. What's the thing that people miss about those 2 great dynasties? What's the thing all these guys write about, but they just don't get? Because you were there, you've lived and worked with both of those organizations.
Well, I think the number one thing, I think they both are very similar in terms of the culture, right? So Walsh had this thing called the standard of excellence, that 17 qualities that he believed in. And the 49ers were all culture based. They were never anything but more, everybody thinks it was the West Coast offense and smash 7 curl and, and 20 bingo cross and all that stuff. But really, at the end of the day, it was Walsh's culture. I can remember, and I wrote about this in Gridiron Genius, I was up in the press box and and Mike Holmgren says, Coach Walsh wants to talk to you. And I put on the headset and he tells me to remind me on Monday to fire the PA announcer because he felt like the guy was acting like a jerk, and so he held everybody accountable. He held everybody to a standard of excellence, and he instilled that culture. And I wrote about this for the Daily Coach, which is a website that Coach Raveling and 3 other gentlemen and I started. It comes in your email box every morning. It is basically trying to be a coach in your life. And I wrote about the 76ers losing the basketball to the Hawks and how the process, they always call this in Philly, where if you lost, you got these high picks and you're going to win. Well, and the point of the column was culture doesn't get tacked on after you win. Culture is the reason why you win. And that's Walsh's quote. And that's so true and so real. And so when you look at the Patriots and you look at the 49ers, they line up identically when Walsh was there, and he installed the culture. And then when he left, Seifert could come in and run the program as if it was no big deal. Now, remember, when George Seifert coached at Cornell, he was a disaster. He got fired at Cornell. When he went to Carolina, he went 1-15 in his 3rd year. He got fired there too. But George never really understood it was culture-based. I mean, George won 2 Super Bowls for the 49ers. He's not even going to be in the Hall of Fame conversation because the culture that was established, he just got into the car. He didn't make the car. That's not a knock on George. That's just the reality of how strong Walsh built the team.
Michael, it's been announced this week the trial pitting some members of the Boland family against trustees of the Broncos and other members of the family is being vacated. Originally supposed to happen on the 12th of July or so. Do you think this points to finally a settlement getting done and a potential sale? And I'm actually going to go another step forward. I've seen a report this morning with the gambling industry in America getting so big and so big. there's talk a team could go from anywhere between $8 and $10 billion. I mean, can you see that being a reality in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I can. I mean, you guys know, how much of these soccer teams that you guys know over in Europe. I mean, they're huge, right? And betting motivates it. I mean, look, it's just where we are in the world, these franchises, and you need television, you need programming, and the NFL gives you programming. And so this new TV deal is going to be very rich. And so the value of the franchise goes up. It's going to be very challenging for some of these owners, like Mike Brown, who owns the Bengals, when he has to pass over the team to his daughter and his son. That inheritance tax is enormously expensive. It's something that the Steelers try to work their way through, and I'm sure it's going to be a problem in Denver once they settle this issue. And Chicago's had the same problem. The Bears have been rumored that they might be for sale because of the inheritance, because of the value. Papa Bear owns the team for, it's 200. Say he paid $200,000 for it. Now it's worth $6 billion. That's a lot of tax money you got to come up with to pay when the transfer happens. So, yeah, I think these franchises, even in basketball, which interesting to see what their ratings are, are they going to still come up and go? I think it's going to continue. Betting has just like fantasy football, betting has made the NFL even more popular.
Michael, I know you had a piece recently in the Daily Coach, the difference between good and great. And I'm kind of interested a little bit in continuing in the Broncos side of things. We know Vic Fangio is a great DC, but Vic Fangio is entering year 3 as a head coach. He's had, the Broncos have really not had any changes to the coaching staff. They've had the least changes to the offensive line in the AFC West because the Raiders blew it up. The Chargers brought in some guys and the Chiefs were kind of forced to change theirs. Vic has got a secondary who are the kind of the envy of the league right now. He's got Von Miller back. He's got a wide receiving core. He's got tight ends. Yeah, there are questions at quarterback, and obviously he's got to go get Mahomes and Herbert. But is it fair that the Broncos fans have reasonable expectations of looking to get 10 wins out of this coming season?
I'd be really disappointed if they didn't get 10 wins. So I think, Belichick often says we have to avoid losing before we can win. And for Denver, that's going to be the mantra. If Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock's the quarterback, they can't screw it up. They're too good. If they don't give the game away, their defense is going to play. They're better as a complete team than Washington, and they might be not as good talent-wise in the defensive front, but they could have elements of Washington's defense. I think this is a really good team minus a great quarterback. Now, if they get good play out of quarterback, can they win 10? Yeah, I think so. I think the AFC West, I think, is a really good division this year. I think the Raiders, their over and under number is, I think, 7.5, and I think partly that is because they're in the West, and the Chargers could certainly improve. Like you mentioned, they fixed their offensive line with the addition of Corey Lindsey, and then they draft Slater at the left tackle. So they're really improved. So I do, but I think Vic has to be able to be a head coach the game so that he's not conservative, but they don't give the game away. They can't give the game away because they're too good. They're too good in every area. And I think this year, more than ever, home field returns. And last year we didn't see it at Denver with Mile High. Even though it was at altitude, we didn't have the fans weren't there. We're going to have fans, and it's going to be a hard time to go into Denver and win a game, especially the way they play defense.
Mike, and I'm going to stick with the team of the NFC North again, and this time in particular it's the Chicago Bears. So recently, Matt Nagy was very adamant on a Chris Collinsworth podcast that Andy Dalton is a starter and Fields will sit behind him as the backup. We've seen in the past where rookies have gone in training camp and they've blown the doors off and they've, inevitably won the position straight away. But yet Nagy is adamant that's not going to be the case. Are you surprised by that, or is he going to look foolish in the end?
I mean, nothing that Matt Nagy says or does surprises me, actually. I think it's the example of if you're a leader, and you want to create competition. Al Davis used to say all the time, when you speak to the media, you're really talking to 3 groups of people. You're talking to the fans, you're talking to your players, and you're talking to the owner. And when you say you have no competition, what does that say to the other players on the team? That they have competition, but Andy Dalton doesn't? I mean, there's so many ways Matt could have gotten around it. Look, we signed Andy Dalton. We didn't anticipate that we were going to be able to get, Justin Fields. But look, Justin Fields, I can't control how he plays. I can only help him try to become a better player. If he takes over Andy, that's on Andy, not on me. Like, leave it on the players. Like, we're going to have competition at every position. Because look, I know you went 8-8 last year, and I know you went to the playoffs, but your team sucked. You got killed in New Orleans, right? You got to rebuild your team. You're over under by the bookies is 7.5. Nobody thinks you're any good. And all of a sudden you're giving away jobs. Like, that's not what leaders do. That's not what leadership is about. You got to push people when they go too slow. You got to calm them when they go too fast. Matt's just making everybody happy.
They do have a poor season. They've no #1 pick either next year. That's gone as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to give up a high pick to the Giants if they don't have a good season. And we don't talk about it because it's but their defense didn't play anywhere near where everybody thinks they did. I mean, they traded Leonard Floyd for Robert Quinn, and essentially, they cut Floyd, signed Quinn. Floyd has his best year for the Rams. Quinn barely got, I think he got 6 quarterback pressures all year and 3 sacks. I mean, they can't rush the passer like they did. Khalil Mack wasn't the same player, and that secondary wasn't the same way that when Vic left it.
Michael, we started talking about the Hall of Fame. We're talking about your article about good, not great, and now we're on to the Broncos and the Bears. So this is definitely going in one consistent direction. But with that in mind, I mean, we talked about your time around greatness and obviously some great franchises, but there are times as fans, not even people close to the NFL, that you see a player, a coach, or someone come in and you realize, no, this isn't going for greatness. This is going for the great abyss, if you like. I mean, Adam Gase's first press conference as the New York Jets head coach springs to mind. There's warning flags flying all over the place. Are there, I don't want to dwell on the negatives, but have there been experiences in your time in the NFL, whether with a team or just observing from afar, that you've gone, that's going to fail. Like, that's just doomed to disaster from the outset?
I thought Zach Taylor, when he got hired by the Bengals, was doomed for disaster. I just don't think, and I have nothing against Zach Taylor. I just don't think he's ready to be a head coach. Look, here's the thing about being an NFL head coach. It's a harder job to get to the United States Senate. You've got 52 senators. There's only 32 head coaches, right? So it's a really hard job to get. And the fact that it's so hard, you better be qualified. Henry Kissinger says in his memoirs, when you move to Washington, you borrow on the intellectual power you bring, and you can't renew it once you're there. Well, when you become an NFL head coach, you're borrowing on your intellectual power. It's hard to renew while you're in the job, because if you lose them while you're renewing your intellectual power, you're fired. So if you're not prepared to be a head coach, it shows up pretty quickly. And I think Zach did. I think there's a lot of guys that show up. I mean, I don't think Matt Nagy has been a very good head coach. I know he went to the playoffs twice, but I don't think he's a leader. I think he's a play caller. I don't think he's a true leader. I think he's a play caller. So what's the difference, right? Leaders do the right thing. Managers do things right. And to me, Zach Taylor and Matt Nagy and some of these other guys are managers. They're not leaders.
Michael, probably just do another quick fire question each year. For me, the draft, which pick in the first round or even in the second round made you sit up and go, what the hell was that? Was it the Raiders or was it somebody else?
It's always the Raiders. I mean, it's always the Raiders. You got to wonder where they thought Leatherwood was going to go when they took him. Farrell, when they took Farrell, you're like, they took Arnett. I mean, if Al Davis was in the room trying to draft a 4.57 corner, now I know they had a 4.49 on him. I mean, Al Davis didn't think 4.49 was fast enough, let alone, I mean, just some of the picks that they've made with John, like, there's such a disconnect. I mean, Mark Davis thinks John was the reason why we won back in the early 2000s and 1 and 2. It was Rich Gannon. It wasn't John. John played a part. We all played a part. John played a big part. But the way John builds a team and the way John drafts, it really shows that he doesn't really understand it.
I'm interested, I suppose, the continuing kind of to get your insights, and again, the good to great piece. Has there been any team who've made moves in this offseason, be it bringing in a new head coach or maybe the draft or the off-season moves that you think can make that step in the 2021 year and go from good to great?
Oh, I think Cleveland's got that opportunity. I don't think it's because they signed Clowney, because I'm not a huge Clowney fan. I think Clowney will get hurt, but I think they're trying to get the good. I mean, they know they had to shore up their defense, and I think they've made moves to try to get there. And so for them to get great, they got to really improve their defense, and they've got a good offensive. They've got one of the best offensive lines in all of football. You know, I think that they certainly have a great opportunity to do that. I think the Colts have a chance to go from good to great. You know, they made the playoffs. They gave Buffalo all they could handle in the playoff game. If Carson Wentz becomes better than Phillip Rivers, they're going to be great. You know, they got a chance to be much better on defense. And so I do think that they're a team to certainly fits into that category. I wish I could say that about Denver, but I just hold back the greatness because of the quarterback. If you put Aaron Rodgers on Denver, or if you put Deshaun Watson on Denver, now they're a great team, you know? But that's easier said than done. But to get from good to great, it's a hard step to take. You got to go through it. You know, I think Minnesota this year is a team that needs to get to good, not to great. You know, they can get to good, you know, and so I think they need to keep building in that direction. But in New England, for example, they got to get good again. They can't, they're not going to get great.
Michael, I was slightly surprised last week when I saw Lamar Jackson's renegotiation with the Ravens involved his mother doing majority of the negotiations. Is that a dangerous move in your opinion? Should he be going down the legal route in terms of getting someone in that should be more clued into these type of contracts to a certain extent?
I don't know if it's, I mean, the contracts are pretty available, and hopefully she has an attorney to help her. I think the language of the contract has to concern them. Look, here's let's just go through it. Pedestrian life. We know Patrick Mahomes makes $45 million. We know Dak Prescott makes 42. We know Deshaun Watson makes roughly 40. Okay, where are you going to put Lamar? He's better than Dak. Okay, he's better than Dak. There's no doubt. He's won MVP of the league. All right, he's better than Dak. You know, he's better than Deshaun. So is he 43? Is he 40? He's not better than Mahomes. So is he 43? Is he 44? Is he 44 and a half? This is what we're negotiating. You know, if Baltimore says, oh, no, he's 35, well, you can't get a contract done that way. You're not going to get one done. Baltimore's goal is to get him near Deshaun Watson, you know, with incentives to get higher, or like lower than Deshaun with incentives to get higher. So I don't think that's the hard part of the contract. I think the language part of the contract and the way the money's paid out and the protection of the player, those are the hard things that have to be written by lawyers, not by some woman that represents her son.
There's a narrative out there that the Ravens could potentially take advantage of the situation.
I'm not sure they can. I mean, if I were the Ravens, I said this on my podcast, that I would make sure he had a lawyer, but that's against Maryland state law. Like, I would encourage him to do that. Like, I would not want to be perceived as trying to take advantage of a young man. He's earned it. We're not talking about, we want to, this isn't back to when stars were on the lot at Warner Brothers and Jack Warner was trying to make all the stars sign these huge contracts. Or, there's a bar in Los Angeles called the Troubadour, right? And the Troubadour would sign artists like Elton John. And so he signed Elton John. Doug Weston was the guy's name. He signed Elton John for to appear 3 nights at the Troubadour before Elton John became Elton John. And in that contract, whatever happened to Elton John, if he became successful, he had to play 10 nights at the Troubadour for the same rate that he was those 3. Well, if you sign that contract, right? You say, oh, shit, at least I know I'm going to get 10 nights at this money. Well, now you're a marquee star. Now you're basically playing 10 nights for free. That's taking advantage of somebody. I don't think people are going to let them do that.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens want to avoid any suggestion of undue influence because they don't want issues with their franchise quarterback. But
exactly.
I think we've got to rank the function of the Ravens front office potentially above the dysfunction at times of the Cowboys front office and how they might negotiate that deal as well.
Yeah,
Michael,
I would think so. I would think so. Yeah.
I have to ask you one very quick fire question, a very specific question. Tom Brady, the guys might have heard me talk about him. He won 7 Super Bowl rings, 5 Super Bowl MVPs, 3 NFL MVPs. kind of well known around NFL circles. But he was in the news recently where it was leaked that apparently during his free agency tour, there was one team that decided they weren't going to go with him and weren't going to entertain him as an option. And Brady's response was, "They're really that they're going to go with that." I'll say mother lover because it's a family show. Any view in your mind as to what team he was talking about?
I on my podcast, I guessed that he was talking about Miami because I knew that Tom wanted to go. He wanted to be on the East Coast. Now, there's some speculation that it was Ryan Tannehill, but here's what I would say: I think that whoever he was talking about, it had to come from either a coach that he knew or a general manager, like in Vrabel, like Mike Vrabel and Tom are friends, and Brian Flores and Tom are friends. So that leads, like that, to me, it wasn't Garoppolo because the 49ers, I think Kyle was interested. I think the 49ers were just coming off the Super Bowl and they're like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to do this? It wouldn't make any sense for them too. So I think that's the case. I think it was more, I think it's either one of those two teams. My guess was Miami.
And if he played in division, that would have been some story forevermore, of course.
That's why I think it was, because I think he would have liked to play in the division.
It definitely worked out well for him anyway in that sense, I guess. But Michael, look, it's been great chatting to you again. We massively appreciate it. You can check out Michael's Twitter account at Lombardi NFL. His work across many different platforms, including The Athletic, which you can get over here now as well. Michael, we'd love to have you on again at some point in the future. And thanks again for your time.
Guys. Have a good one. Keep safe. Thank you so much. Appreciate being here.
Happy 4th of July, man.
I can't wish that to you, but have a great weekend. I'm sure you guys will. Just an excuse to have one.
Absolutely.
Our next guest on the Irish NFL show is Alex Kozmerek. Alex is a space science student and national team member, currently playing in GFL 1 with the Kiel Baltic Hurricanes, previously having won the Shamrock Bowl with the Belfast Trojans and spending time in Brickball with Tamworth Phoenix and Edinburgh Wolves. He's also experienced in flag football and as a coach, including as a DC for the University of Edinburgh. Alex, welcome in.
Hi, cheers.
So I suppose, a really interesting kind of background in the sport, and obviously now playing in Germany, but we may as well begin at the beginning. How did you kind of first get into American football?
Well, the first thing that started it was I was probably 10 or 11, and my dad had got us, me and my brother, for our birthday, a PlayStation 3 from America, and it came with Madden 07 or something, and it was the only game that came with it, so we gave it a go and had no real clue what was going on, but we were kids and it was good fun. But I've always been a bit of a numbers man, bit of a numbers nerd, and so I started getting then I liked following originally college football, and just following I like the numbers aspect of it, and people hitting each other. But yeah, so I actually started watching college football first, and then some friends of mine in secondary school, one of them was from Atlanta, so we watched the Super Bowl, and I started getting into that, and then watching it. And then when I went to university, I was a rugby player, and I liked it, but I wasn't very good at much aside from tackling people. And so, I decided that maybe if I just played a sport in a position where all I had to do was tackle people, that maybe I'd enjoy it even more. So when I was 19, now near 6 years ago, I went and was a rookie at Belfast Trojans, and it was good fun. I said I wanted to be a safety, and I was told rookies don't play safety. I was a corner, and then moved from being a backup corner to being a starting linebacker, which was the beginning of my sort of, we'll say, versatile experience of football. I think I'm really graduating to being a positionless wonder at the moment, because I played strong safety for a bit of Trojans, and then I worked in England on placement. I played with Tamworth there, and I got more exposure to like free safety and deep safety work, and started playing flag. And then I came back, did my final year, and that was in 2019. So I was captain of the Trojans, and we won the Shamrock Bowl that year. And then off I went to Scotland when I graduated, and I was training a bit with Edinburgh Wolves before COVID. And in that time, I was actually really lucky. I got to, I played against a couple of American colleges. I played in Luxembourg. I was on an invitational team in Iceland with Phoenix. I got to go to Copenhagen and play against Oslo and Karlstad. So I got to like experience lots of different teams and lots of different opportunities. And then COVID happened, and I sort of had my heart set, having missed the season, and I felt like I was really, really flying in the 2020 preseason. So with having gone back to uni and things being remote, I thought it would be a good chance to like try and push the boat out with getting over to Europe. And so through my DB coach with the Wolfhounds, the national team, Dara Farrell, he had a lot of contacts in Germany. So I spoke to him about the process and put together my 2019 tape and sent that out. And so I had a decent bit of interest, some GFL2 teams, some Finnish teams and the like. But then Kiel Baltic Hurricanes from the GFL1, they were really interested. And so they got in touch back in January, and sort of hashed things out. And there's certainly some hiccups on the way, all COVID related. So I only got over 2 weeks before the season started, and then had to quarantine. So I had 3 training sessions before my first game. So it was definitely, I'm probably still getting used to the speed and the speed of it, mainly. That's the main thing. With no preseason, it's certainly been a steep learning curve, but I'm enjoying it. And I'm not playing. I was supposed to be a safety. I was a free safety the last full season I played, and I'm a free safety for Ireland. I'm not a free safety in Germany. I'm a linebacker, so I think I'm probably the GFL1's smallest starting linebacker, but it's more of a hybrid role anyway, so it's not the worst thing in the world. I've got 3 games now under the belt. I'm away to Berlin this weekend for game 4, and we're hoping for a bit more success this weekend. And that's where I'm at now. So.
Well, firstly, I think the number of people who actually get into the game because of Madden is quite considerable. I think also, the liking for stats, but also violence. We had Benjamin Albright on the show last week, and I think he described football as violent 3D action chess, which I think is a good encapsulation of it. But can I ask you, before we move on to the next, I suppose I'm interested just in terms of playing safety. You said that's what you wanted to do almost from the outset. How did the interest in the safety position come about? Was it a particular player, or what was it that made you want to play safety?
So from my start with college football, I really love, and this tied over into rugby a little bit. So there was an Australian rugby player, Nick Cummins, whose nickname was the Honey Badger, and this guy was an absolute weapon. He was hilarious, really good player. Like, he threw himself around. He was just, and that's why he was called the Honey Badger, because he just, didn't give a shit, that sort of thing. So, and at the same time that I was enjoying Nick Cummins, the Honey Badger, I was also enjoying Tyron Matthew, the Honey Badger. And I felt, I don't know, I just felt like I was a similar sort of player, where like I wasn't necessarily, I'm still not, I wasn't necessarily, I definitely wasn't, sorry, let me correct myself there. Now I'm not necessarily, like not an athlete, but more, playing smart and playing physical and just playing high effort. And that's what I thought I was. I was like, I'm not an athlete, but I'll do my best. So I really, really liked Tyron Matthew. And that was probably the start of it. And then as well, Cam Chancellor, who I'm definitely not like, but I wish I was. He was definitely a big one, and because that was where a lot of the hype then when I was a teenager was all about the Seahawks, Legion of Boom, and I was like, yeah, that looks like fun. That's the sort of thing I want to do. And I think it was like the defining moment that made me go, I'm going to do this. Was in a rugby game. We were getting spanked by a team, and their number 8 picked up and he ran the ball in he jogged the ball in from about 20 meters, picking up from a ruck. Everyone was tired, and he sort of showboating behind the try line. And I was coming across from the far wing, and he didn't know I was there whatsoever. And I hit him at full speed in the back. And he dropped the ball, and I remember one of his teammates decided to take exception and lamp me in the face. But I had just this big dumb grin on because I was like, oh geez, he had no idea I was coming. And so yeah, that was like the thing. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I would like I said, if all I had to do was tackle, I'd be pretty happy. And yeah, never. I knew full well I wasn't kidding myself. That I will, I'm sort of lanky and awkward. I'm not a linebacker material as much as I wish I could be. So yeah, I was like, nah, safety's the one for me. And
well, yeah. Linebackers come in all shapes and sizes, in fairness, especially in the modern NFL. Are there any safeties that you particularly like in the league at the moment?
I guess Blitz Boy, Jamal Adams. I've had comparisons to that. It sort of depends what mood I'm in, whether I'm a Blitz Boy or whether I'm a free safety or whatever. But I do like Jamal Adams because just a high intensity player. But I really do like the sort of hybrid players. So like Derwin James, definitely. I mean, he's always injured, which is a bit of a shame. But loved him as a college player as well, and I still love college football. Jesse Bates as well, where it's more of a case of he's not this absolute monster, but he's just so good. So I love that because that follows in with Tyrann Mathieu, who still is up there at the top, my absolute favorite. I wanted to be 32 as a rookie. Someone else had it, so I took 31. Still sore about that to this day. But yeah, so trying to think who else would I like. Those would be the main ones, definitely. I mean, Tyrann Mathieu he's just an unreal player. I just love the way he plays the game. So still number 1 in my eyes.
Well, in the lead up to the Super Bowl, we were able to chat to some of the players, and Michael was talking to Tyrann Mathieu, and he couldn't have been nicer. So super nice guy off the field, very, very different on it, certainly intense. And I suppose interested then, as you got the opportunity, I suppose, to be like a DC, and what was that experience like? Are there particular defensive coordinators that you look to that you think, geez, I really like their way of going about it?
Well, I mean, I've always quite liked the like Wade Phillips idea, which is just send lots of pressure and tell everyone to just man up one-on-one outside and deal with it. But I like that more from an NFL viewpoint. I guess from my own viewpoint, I feel like a lot of people try and like correlate the NFL to the level of football that gets played outside of the NFL. And it's very, very different. So it's probably actually, I mean, I definitely liked so Brendan Kelleher, who's the Ireland DC and Cork's DC. He does a very good job of not like just slapping in this scheme and being like, deal with it. He's, I mean, granted, probably easier when you're like selecting players from a pool as a side to just this is who you have. But yeah, I think he does a good job of like making use of players who he had, and that was something I've tried to copy as a DC. It's like it's not about here's my scheme, figure it out. It's like how can I utilize you as a player. And so in the NFL, I mean, again, it ties into some of my favorite players, but guys like Jamal Adams, Derwin James, Tyrann Mathieu, who get moved around as chess pieces, and their DCs play around that, and they're communicators, and everything's very fluid. And again, the Legion of Boom, I mean, it's just a ridiculous defense. And Dan Quinn, I mean, I know he hasn't had much success as a head coach, but certainly back then as a DC, like he did change the face of NFL defenses with that sort of single high cover 3 shell look. And yeah, it's certainly I mean, it still seems to do the job well enough today.
Yeah, as a Broncos fan, I certainly was on the wrong end of that, but we've lost by more in a Super Bowl, so that wasn't too bad. But Wade, we had the opportunity to chat to Wade as well, and it was fascinating what you're saying about like the pressure, because Mark, who is a Patriots fan, talked about that 2015 AFC Championship game. And he said, you hit Brady about 20 times, and Wade, without missing beat, goes 24. he knew, and that was the only way I think one can beat Brady. But yeah, I think between that 2013 Seattle defense and the 2015 Broncos defense, two very special units. And I suppose then as we kind of wind down, Alex, just interested, like for you. What's the long-term aim? Would you like to stay in Germany for a while, or what is it that you'd see yourself doing over the next few years?
I mean, obviously I've sort of bounced around quite a lot, so I'm at the point where I'm like, I wanted this opportunity to play at probably the highest level that I possibly could. I mean, I used to think, if I had a chance to play in like GFL 2, that would be unreal. So having got to play in the GFL 1, I'm pretty happy, because I'm happy holding it, because as it is, I'm like, I'd quite like to just settle down and get more established, because like I've had to like not just in terms of football, in terms of life, I've had to bounce around and do this and that, whatever, and I'm like, no, I'd like to maybe stay, like the goal is to stay in one place for 2 years. I'm like, oh, that'd be good. So as it stands, no, the plan is not to go back to Europe. I mean, I put in quite a lot of time and effort into getting my second master's out of the way and specializing, and I'm like, yeah, I want to do that, but wherever I go, I mean, I'd like to again, after COVID, I'd like to take probably a full year for myself as a football player before I go back into things like coaching. But I do really like the coaching, and I'm really passionate about growing the game, and that's not just in a numbers case. It's in a case of quality, because I feel like there's a lot of work needs to be done on building like that base level of the game, and so part of that is like things like youth teams and just a bit more of a focus on actual coaching at the lower levels, and that's sort of something that I want to get into. So I'll probably go back to doing some coaching wherever I go after I take a year for myself to it feels at the moment like I might have slightly forgotten how to play football a wee bit. I've joked to my teammates that right now I don't feel like a good football player. I feel like a good rugby player, because all I'm doing is tackling people around the legs, not proper football style. So yeah, I mean, I don't know where I'll be necessarily, but wherever it is, I'm sort of happy to build a foundation, and I'd like to hope that I can go to the team and sort of bring a bit of experience and a bit of that focus on high quality basics, because I think it is definitely something that's missing, and certainly the best teams I've played for and the best teams I've played against, it's not about the OBJ catches, it's not about the big hits, it's about just doing simple things right. And you can have a guy who can pull off the OBJ catches, but if he can't run his route properly, that sort of thing, it's like, what's the point? A guy who will knock people's heads off, but if he's never in the right place to make a tackle, like, it doesn't matter. So I sort of want to focus on helping teams out with that, and just growing the game a bit.
Well, I want to wish you, continued success both this weekend in Berlin and for the rest of the season, and just say thanks very much for taking the time to chat to me today.
Cheers, thanks very much.
Welcome back into the Irish NFL show. We're delighted to be joined by Tom Donovan, a guy closer to home. He plays for the Kiel Baltic Hurricanes. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, Michael.
It's good to have somebody close to home in that sense. Tom, tell us a bit about yourself. So you play in Germany. How did you get into football in the first place?
Football overall, I mean, when it didn't come to playing, I guess I was watching it on TV, more so through playing the Madden series. I'm sure everyone's aware of the video games, and then just like all the sort of movies you'd have seen in your childhood. any given Sunday, probably a bit more adult. But Remember the Titans, the Water Boy. A personal favorite was like Little Giants, even though that's more like a Disney film, much more corny, but kind of funny, I think, if you've ever seen it. But yeah, and then playing was only once I was essentially in UCD. In Ireland, unfortunately, the rules are you have to be at least 18 years old to play contact football, and that's not really the same in Europe. But look, you work with what you got, and there was a local flag football team organised outside my school, which I went to in transition year, I think. And then once I had a bit of a taste, like, look, as soon as I get to college, I'm playing this. And when I went to UCD, that was my first go at it, and haven't looked back since, really.
And I suppose, Tom, then in terms of playing with UCD, and I think you did an exchange in the US as well, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit, like, were you playing both sides of the ball with UCD? Did you have a fixed position? Because I know from going to games that I've seen guys line up in all sorts of positions. Equally, some guys very specialized. What was your experience with that?
Right, yeah. The first year, I guess, was a bit of a they like to go with the people that they trust, and I've kind of been in the system for a while, and someone as inexperienced as myself was just kind of in the wings waiting for that first year. But I was kind of sparingly in at tight end or sort of backup quarterback for the main guy that was there. And since then he moved off after like a year or two. And I basically took the reins as the quarterback for UCD for about 4 or 5 years. And it's only been in sort of the last 2 years that I've kind of made the switch to receive. Like, I'm just trying to do whatever I think can help the team most. And I thought I have the athletic traits, I guess, to be useful outside at wide receiver. I thought we might have needed another body out there. So and we have a great quarterback room anyway currently in the team. So I just thought it'd be the best move. But yeah, as you said, look, it's a team that always come summer has had trouble retaining the students as they want to go on their J1s or whatever it is. They finish their college season, and our season in Ireland continues through the summer. Essentially, it's a summer sport. So they definitely ask you to help where you can, if it means linemen playing both ways, or corners playing receivers, or safeties playing receivers and stuff. So yeah, I've dabbled in everywhere. I've dabbled on the defensive line and safety as well, just to help out and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a try all over the years. Like,
Tom, you're based in Germany now, and I suppose how did the move to Germany come about? And I suppose what's the transition been like from playing in UCD to going over there, and I suppose competing against players across from the States and various different countries?
Right, yeah, it's been a challenge. Like the physicality and the athleticism is definitely up there. Like, I mean, the international team for Ireland, the Irish Wolfhounds, has kind of been recently rebooted and has been kind of in effect since about 2016, I think, or 2017. We had like exhibition games against the Netherlands and Belgium and stuff, and we've had success. We've beaten the Belgian team twice now, both home and away, back in I think 2018 and 2019 possibly. But I think of the level here as a sort of, because that Irish Wolfhounds team is very it's the everyone, the best players in the country coming together, I guess, to play and train, and it's not a huge window of time to have access to these players. But I think this Germany, like GFL level, is quite similar to the international level. For maybe it's a bit, they obviously have way more time, more efficient in terms of the scheduling and training and access to players. But I feel that if you gave that same opportunity of time to the Irish Wolfhounds, that they would have a chance to compete, I think, at a GFL 1 level, I guess. But some of these guys are fed quite a lot of quite largely here. I think there's some huge lads on the teams in the trenches. Like, that is something you don't see as many of those sort of guys in Ireland. So it's scary, but look, fortunately I don't have to deal with them too often.
it's amazing watching the leagues over Europe and seeing the difference as well. For you, Tom, what's the long-term aim for yourself? Do you plan to stay in Germany? Would you like to play in Ireland, or have you got maybe different aspirations in that sense?
It's hard to say. I'm thinking, like, I was kind of in between jobs when this came up, and I have to make sure I give Dara Farrell a shout out. He's one of my coaches at home in UCD. Joined the team a few years ago as our sort of defensive coordinator and mastermind. He played himself in the GFL, I think back probably 10 years ago, back in his younger days, but probably wouldn't like me saying that. But I think he played for Lübeck, which at the time could have been a GFL1 team. I actually can't remember. But the current coach that I'm playing under here, Timo Zorn, him and they were both buddies back in the day for that team, I think, and that's just how the opportunity came up. So so that I very much deviated away from the question here, but like I'm not, this was definitely I didn't think I was going to get this opportunity. I'm 29 now. If this is nothing like a professional league, so maybe people can play into their late 30s or 40s, I'm sure, and get away with it, but I think of this as more of a bucket list thing. I would love to continue it. I don't know what the coaches are going to come up and say to me after the year, but I do have a plan, I guess, to go back home at the end of the season, find a job, see if it goes out well. Do they have opportunities to go? We've all gotten used to working remote. Maybe there'll be those sort of windows left open for people to maybe pick up and move up somewhere else and be able to maybe continue living out the dream, I guess, for someone locally here for me. Like, so I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not really thinking that far ahead, but I wouldn't say no if I can get the same opportunity again, and I'll always have my door open or waiting for the person to come knocking for that next step. But if not, I'll gladly live out my days with UCD and then be put out to pasture.
Well, look, whatever happens, you've had the opportunity, and interesting to hear, I suppose, that move, tight end, QB, wide receiver, a little bit of the Justin Edelman's in there, and leading on to the NFL. Do you have a particular NFL team, Tom?
Yeah, I've been a Seattle Seahawks fan for a number of years now. I say 2005. I was very young at that point, and I did not realize that was a team that had just appeared, or it was just appearing in the Super Bowl and got robbed, supposedly. Well, I don't know, but I've been sticking to that one team all these years, and whilst it's been more fruitful than not, it's been fun. And I said earlier, but the year in exchange I spent in the University of Washington, I had that opportunity to go. Well, at least I took the opportunity to see the team when they were playing in the Super Bowl in New York. I have an uncle who lives there, so he's able to have me stay there for that weekend. And that was an experience I wouldn't forget. Like, best moment of fandom in my life.
Tom, just you touched on before we start recording around playbooks and the remote access and obviously doing the meetings. What's that like to be involved in?
It's cool. I mean, like most people don't have their cameras on or their audio's on. You let the coach lead the conversation, and people dipping in and out with questions as you go. But at first it came off as
feel like a lecture from college.
How many? I don't even like. I wasn't even in college when there was many online lectures. But yeah, like. It does feel like that, actually. It does really much. So they have this they use GoWebinar or GoToWebinar or something very similar to Zoom, all that. So a lot of sharing screens, and it's fine. Like it's efficient. The Germans, they love their efficiency.
Absolutely. Tom, I'd like to just wish you all the very best in the future. Obviously, a very interesting time ahead for you in Germany, and you're welcome on any time as well, especially if Seattle do well, which I think they will in this next season. And just thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it.
No, thank you guys for having me on it.
Bye.